Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at Punjab National Bank's second quarter results for fiscal year 2025. Got their analyst presentation, press releases, and a whole bunch of questions. So let's jump right in and see what these numbers really tell us.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so first off, the headlines are all about PNB's surge in profitability. What's the real story here?
Well, it's not just hype. PNB's net profit is up a huge 145% compared to the same time last year.
Wow, 145%. That's impressive.
Yeah, and it's not a one-time thing either. Their operating profit is also up by 10.3%. And their net interest income, that's the money they're making from interest, has grown by a solid 6%.
Okay, so they're making more money across the board. And when we look at the charts they've provided, it's clear this isn't new. They've been on this upward trend for a while. What's driving this success?
Well, a lot of factors are at play here, but one of the biggest is their improvement in asset quality. Basically, how healthy are the loans they're giving out?
All right, because those loans are a big part of a bank's assets. And if those loans go bad, it hurts the bank. Exactly. And PNB has done a fantastic job of reducing those bad loans, their non-performing assets or NPAs.
And the numbers really back that up. Their gross NPA percentage, which tells us how much of their loans are considered risky, has dropped from 11.78% in March of 2022 down to 4.48% now.
Right, and even better, their net NPA, which factors in the money they've set aside to cover potential losses, has gone from 4.8% to just 0.46% in the same time frame. So they're not just reducing bad loans, they're also getting really good at managing potential losses.
It's like they're being proactive instead of reactive.
Absolutely. And there's another measure that reflects this, the provision coverage ratio, or PCR. This shows us how much money the bank has set aside specifically to cover potential loan losses. It's like a safety net.
A bigger safety net, the better. Right.
Exactly. And PNB's PCR has jumped from 81.6% to a very impressive 96.7% since March 2022.
So for anyone listening, what this means is PNB is in a much stronger position. They're better prepared to handle any unexpected financial bumps in the road.
I like that analogy. They've definitely strengthened their financial muscles.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about how PNB is actually making money. They have a pretty diverse business mix. It's not just one type of loan or customer, right?
Yeah, you're right. They've got a good mix, and we're seeing some interesting growth, particularly in their retail, agriculture, and MSME lending.
Those MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium enterprises, they're really the backbone of the Indian economy.
Absolutely, and that's why this diversification is so key. It spreads out their exposure to risk. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Makes sense. So in this quarter, we see a 14.6% year-over-year growth in retail lending, 11.1% in agriculture, and 8.9% for those MSMEs. But wait, you mentioned earlier that the actual growth rate for MSMEs is even higher.
Yeah, that's right. It's closer to 14.3% if
Yeah.
you consider that some MSME customers were reclassified to the corporate category. So
Mm.
PNB is really strategically targeting these sectors as key drivers of growth.
Got it. So it's not just about sticking to traditional ways of doing business. BNB is also diving headfirst into digital transformation.
Oh yeah, big time. They're really embracing the digital revolution and even leading the charge in some ways. Their mobile app, PNB One, has seen some phenomenal growth.
I mean, think about it. How often do you use your phone for banking these days? It's becoming the norm, and PNB is tapping right into that.
Yeah, for sure. They've seen their average daily UPI transactions through PNB One more than triple. It went from 33,000 transactions a day in September 2023 to a massive 106,000 in September 2024. That's just in 1 year.
Wow, that's incredible. But they're not just relying on the app, are they?
No, they're not. They have other digital initiatives that are proving successful, like their tab-based account opening. It's super convenient and has brought in over 2 lakh new TASI accounts and over Orange 17,500 crore in deposits. That's a ton of new customers and new money coming in, all thanks to their digital strategy.
It seems like they're really committed to making banking easy and accessible.
Exactly. They're adapting to the way people want to bank today.
So all this growth is exciting, but can they keep it up? That's where their capital comes in. And they recently made a big move with their Qualified Institutional Placement, or QIP. They raised a cool Rs 5,000 crore. So what does that mean for their capital position?
Well, a QIP is basically a way for companies to raise money by issuing shares to institutional investors.
I see.
And PNB's QIP was oversubscribed by over 16 times. That means investors were really eager to get a piece of the pie.
So they see a lot of potential in PNB.
Absolutely. And 68% of those bids came from foreign institutional investors. So not just domestic investors are confident in PNB's future, but international investors are too.
Okay, so that's a big vote of confidence. But how does this tie into their TRA, or their capital adequacy ratio? That's a key measure of a bank's financial strength, right?
Right. The QIP boosted PNB's capital base, which strengthens both their CET1, a specific measure of core capital, and their overall CRAR by about 65 basis points. In the world of banking, that's significant. It gives them more flexibility to support future growth and handle any potential economic hiccups.
So it's like they're building up their financial reserves to weather any storm.
Yeah, you could say that a strong capital position is crucial for any bank, especially in today's uncertain economic environment.
Speaking of which, let's talk about something that's becoming increasingly important for businesses and investors: ESG principles. Environmental, social, and governance. What's PNB doing in this area?
They're making some really impressive strides here. They're clearly dedicated to sustainable and responsible banking practices.
For example, they've planted 2.5 lakh trees and are investing in solar energy plants.
Yeah, they're definitely taking concrete steps to reduce their environmental impact. Even their head office building has a GRIA 5-star rating, which is a top certification for green buildings in India.
That's great to hear. And it's not just about the environment either. They're actively involved in social initiatives as well.
Right, they're financing self-help groups which empower women and communities to become financially independent. And they're extending credit to farmers through the Kisan credit card scheme.
So they're showing a commitment to both environmental and social responsibility. That's pretty impressive.
Absolutely. It's becoming more and more important for businesses to consider the broader impact they're having on the world.
So they're hitting the trifecta: strong financials, environmental consciousness, and social responsibility.
Yeah, it's a good combination.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, so let's take a moment to digest all this and come back for part two, where we'll delve deeper into PNB's digital initiatives and their performance in managing those non-performing assets.
Sounds good. I'm ready when you are.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about PNB's digital transformation, and it's clear they're going all in on this. But what's really making these digital offerings so successful? Let's start with that mobile app, PNB One.
Well, PNB One, it's not your typical banking app. It's like a one-stop shop for almost everything finance related.
Oh, really? Like
Yeah.
what? Give me an example.
Well, you can manage your accounts, obviously, pay your bills, transfer money, invest in different schemes, even apply for loans.
All from your phone.
Yep, all right there in your pocket. And people are definitely loving it.
So they are actually using it.
Yeah, the numbers show it. The number of active users on PNB One has gone from 15.3 million in September last year to 20 million in September this year.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just downloads either. The average daily logins have almost doubled. People are actually using this app regularly.
So they're not just attracting new users, they're keeping them engaged too.
Exactly. And they're not putting all their eggs in one basket either.
What do you mean?
They're using other digital channels like WhatsApp banking.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's super convenient. You can get banking updates and even do transactions right through your WhatsApp.
Which makes a lot of sense in India, where WhatsApp is like the main way everyone communicates.
Exactly. So they've adopted this multi-channel digital strategy.
And how's it impacted their performance?
Well, if you look at the share of digital transactions, it's now reached 89% in the first half of this fiscal year, up from 86% last year.
So almost 9 out of 10 transactions are happening digitally.
Yep, that's right.
And this shift to digital isn't just good for customers who get more convenience and flexibility. It also helps PNB streamline their operations and cut costs.
It's a win-win.
I think so.
Now, let's switch gears for a bit and talk about another area where PNB has been making impressive progress managing those non-performing assets, those bad loans.
Yeah, that's been a real success story for them. As we discussed earlier, they've significantly reduced both their gross and net NPA percentages. They're really getting a handle on this.
It's like they've gone from playing defense to offense when it comes to NPAs. What have they done to achieve this?
Well, they've adopted a multi-pronged approach focusing on early identification and resolution of stress assets.
So capture those potential problems early on.
Yeah, exactly. They've tightened their credit appraisal processes, so they're being more careful about who they lend to.
Being more selective up front.
Yeah, and they're closely monitoring existing loans, looking for any signs of trouble.
So they're proactive. And if they do spot a potential problem, they're taking quick action to recover the money, using tools like the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code and the NRCL.
So they're not just hoping for the best, they're actively managing these situations.
Right, they have a strategy in place.
Now, with all this positive momentum,
Mm-hmm.
what do you see as some potential challenges and opportunities for PNB moving forward?
Well, the banking industry is never boring. It's constantly changing. One challenge could be rising interest rates.
because it makes borrowing more expensive.
Exactly. And that can impact loan demand. Plus, there's the global economic uncertainty right now.
Things are pretty volatile out there.
Yeah, and those global factors can definitely affect the Indian banking sector. And then you have the competition from fintech companies.
Those tech startups that are shaking things up.
Exactly. They're constantly innovating and challenging traditional banks. So PNB needs to stay agile and keep innovating to keep up.
It's like running a marathon. They have to maintain their pace and adjust to the changing terrain.
Yeah, I like that analogy. But the good news is PNB seems well prepared to tackle these challenges.
How so?
Well, they have a strong capital position, a diverse business mix, and they're clearly embracing digital innovation. Plus, their commitment to sustainability and social responsibility is a big plus.
It sounds like they're building a solid foundation for long-term success. So for our listener who might be thinking about investing in PNB or just wants to better understand the Indian banking sector, what would you say is the key takeaway from all of this?
PNB's recent performance is definitely encouraging. They're demonstrating resilience, adaptability, and a forward-thinking approach. But as with any investment, it's crucial to do your own research before making any decisions.
Great advice. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive into PNB's performance, I have one final thought-provoking question for our listeners to consider. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into Punjab National Bank's second quarter results for fiscal year 2025. Let's put it all together and see what we've learned.
Yeah, let's do it.
Imagine you're an investor taking a look at the Indian banking landscape. What jumps out at you about PNB's performance this quarter?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, their financials are looking really strong. Profitability is up, asset quality has improved dramatically, and they're clearly a major player in the digital banking space.
Yeah, they're not just keeping up with the digital trends, they're really shaping them. And it's not all about chasing the latest fad either. They're making smart, strategic moves, positioning themselves for long-term sustainable growth.
Right. They're clearly committed to those ESG principles we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And they're focusing on lending to those key sectors like retail agriculture and those MSMEs, those small businesses that are really the engine of the Indian economy.
And let's not forget that incredibly successful QIP. They've bolstered their capital base, which shows they're financially savvy and attractive to investors.
Yeah, that was a big win for them. It gives them the resources and flexibility to pursue new growth opportunities and deal with any market volatility.
Okay, so it's clear PNB is doing a lot of things right. But like any company, they face challenges and opportunities. What are some of the things that could impact their future trajectory?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is the constantly evolving banking landscape. They need to stay agile and adapt to new technologies and changing customer expectations.
It's a fast-paced world.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's the rise of fintech. Those tech startups are disrupting the traditional banking model.
So PNB has to keep innovating to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely. And there are those external factors to consider too, like rising interest rates, global economic uncertainties, new regulations. All of those can impact a bank's performance.
So a lot to keep an eye on. Here's a final thought I want to leave our listeners with. Given all this momentum and these ambitious plans, what role could PNB play in shaping the future of banking in India?
That's a great question. They definitely have the potential to be a game changer, but they'll need to navigate a complex and dynamic landscape.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into Punjab National Bank's Q2 FY25 results. Hope you found this exploration insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Always encourage everyone to keep learning and stay curious about the world of finance.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, happy investing.